Okay, hello everyone, welcome to dedoc and welcome for our second dedoc symposium at ISPAD, but the first dedoc symposium to take place in person live at an ISPAD conference. My name is Bastian Hauck, I am the founder of dedoc, and it's my great honor to be here today to host this symposium with some amazing speakers, some dedoc voices and some guests, and with course with all of you being here from the dedoc voices community, from the ISPAD conference. And I also want to say, and this is quite special, a big hello and welcome to everybody watching us live, not only on the ISPAD platform, but live out there in the wild world of the internet. I'm looking at, I think, this camera back there, because that is a special and a first, I think, also for ISPAD. We are streaming this symposium as we speak live through the dedoc website to our Facebook channel and to YouTube Live. This is how we at dedoc understand making information, education, and something like a conference such as important as ISPAD accessible. Access for us is about information and education to everyone out there in our dedoc community, and that includes the hundreds, thousands, if not more, who cannot make it to Abu Dhabi at this time, but they will be watching near and far, and I know from diabetes advocates all the way from Australia to Europe to probably even here in the UAE to wherever they may be in the world, online right now and following. So welcome to you all if you're watching live, or if you're re-watching the recording of this later on, because it will stay on our website, YouTube, and Facebook channels for a long time to come. Let me say a couple of words about dedoc. I am sure for those of you here in the ISPAD conference, you probably, you're here, so you probably are here because you've heard a bit about us. You may also be here because you've talked to some of our amazing dedoc voices. Those are diabetes advocates from across the world, and you will have probably seen them because many of them are wearing these masks with the little hashtag and the circle. I usually say the blue circle, but it's white here. This is our logo, the hashtag, because dedoc started about a decade ago on Twitter, and the circle, of course, representing the blue circle, the international symbol for diabetes. What we do with dedoc is we started 10 years ago as a Twitter hashtag. We ran tweet chats every Wednesday night, and it was something I started out of a nudge. Basically, it was a hobby of mine. Fast forward a couple of years later, we did what we called the doc days. It was first meetings of diabetes advocates, meaning bloggers or people that were writing somewhere, people that were having a drive to share more about living with diabetes in the peer support form of the world. And we got a group of those together for the first time, well, first times actually in the 2015-16 years in Berlin locally. This is where I'm from, Berlin, Germany. But then for the first time internationally at EASD in Stockholm in 2017. It was a great meeting, but for one little thing. We had this meeting next to EASD Stockholm, but we were not allowed to be at EASD Stockholm because we were considered patients. And EASD, such as ISPAD back then, and ATTD were considered professional scientific conferences, and that was not supposed to be the place for what we here consider maybe not the most important, but a very important stakeholder as well, which is people living with diabetes. And this is who we are. Fast forward again, ISPAD, and I have to say a huge thank you to Carine, who will put this into much better words in just a minute. Carine, Jamie, Kate, and the whole ISPAD crew. ISPAD was the first conference to not only allow us to hold doc days actually the first conference to allow us to hold doc days in person. At the conference venue was ATTD, Tadej Bertolino, then EASD, then also ISPAD, but ISPAD was the first ever conference last year when everything was virtual, kind of the trailblazers, to do two things. One, they allowed us to hold our first ever dedoc symposium, and for us that makes a huge difference. It is one thing to hold a doc day. That's what we call the Diabetes Online Community Gathering, where it's mostly people from the community talking amongst themselves about projects that are important, things we work on, sharing experiences. And yes, we had always said we follow an open door policy, everybody is welcome, and there were some HCPs, some nurses, some researchers, some industry people kind of listening in, but it was mostly us. Being able to speak in the form of a symposium at a conference like this is it completely changes the ballgame. Because this is why we also took that title, what we, meaning the patient community, wish you, HCPs, nurses, researchers, industry people, what we wish you knew and why. Because we want to share this peer support bubble with you, hope you understand it better after this conference, after this symposium, and join us in some of the things that matter to us, some of the things that are important to us, and that hopefully will be important to you guys as well. I don't want to make too many words. I have a couple of very quick announcements. I want to go, let me see how this works. I just press on this. Which of the buttons do I press to move on? The big arrow? That's what I'm doing, but it's not. Ah, there it is. This is our agenda for today. So we'll have Carine in a minute giving her words of welcome and saying from her side why she did what she did with her team, invite us here for a patient advocate symposium. She will probably also talk about why ISPAD has done a lot more than that, but I will leave that to you. And we just had this other patient symposium taking place in the room next door just until half an hour ago. I think this is great. We will have Zuzanna Burzyńska from Poland share a little bit about her experience. Zuzanna is our youngest DDoc voice ever, and that's why we brought her here, because ISPAD is, of course, a conference for youth, for people with diabetes in the young and youth age. We have Sethi from India talking about the amazing work she is doing, because she's running camps for young people living with diabetes primarily. And then we have Tom. Tom is a special guest, so to say. We've had Tom speak all the way to 2-3 years ago on Doc Days as well. But Tom is going to talk once again about the T1D Index. I know you've probably heard quite a bit about it, but we thought we should give him the stage once more. For here, primarily also for the online community watching right now, because the T1D Index is so important. And I asked him to also rephrase some of the messages so that they are specifically targeting this world of peer support and what DDoc is all about. Next thing, DDoc Voices. I've mentioned that a couple of times. I've pointed out this. I hope you have gotten the chance to talk to some of our amazing scholars. The main thing we do at DDoc these days is we run what is today the largest scholarship program for diabetes advocates, for people living with diabetes that want to basically change the world of healthcare as it is done and get peer support to be an important part of this. And this is not something we can do at DDoc as a small organization, as a core team. We can only do this by creating a platform. I've always said since 10 years ago when we started that DDoc is a platform for others to stand on, and then we raise that platform and give that voice a larger audience, like here at ISPAD. At this point, I would just like all the DDoc voices to stand up for your applause, because you are the ones making this happen. Also for everybody else to see who these amazing people are. You are making this possible. You will have seen them on Twitter and Instagram and sometimes even on TikTok. This is what they are here for. They're sharing everything they hear and learn at this conference with their communities, sometimes in English, sometimes in Polish, in German, in Russian, and any other languages. And they make it accessible through platforms that I'm not on TikTok and I suck on Instagram, I was told here, but you guys know how to do that. And it's important because so many people with the diabetes will never follow a scientific conference, but they will get some of their information on Instagram, for example. And it's important that the information provided there is good and accurate and at a high level. So thank you for doing what you're doing. You will find them all, and I will pass this around later. We have this, you will see it here. We have this DDoc voice book where all the DDoc voices that we brought this year to EASD and ISPAD are in. We've given 165 scholarships this year for patient advocates to come to ATTD in spring, to EASD 3 weeks ago in Stockholm, and now here, plus the German Diabetes Conference. We will give another round of close to 200 scholarships next year. We're currently looking at different countries, maybe England, very probably India. We're working on that as we speak, and we are very, very proud of doing so. I'll stop here. I've already said enough. Carine, again, thank you for making this possible. Thank you for hosting the DDoc Voices, the DDoc Voices Scholarship, and the symposium. And now I'll give it to you.
Well, maybe I can return the thank you for being here, the DDoc voices, either in person or in online. And maybe I can have my first slide. As ISPAD, we are very proud that you are here and that we can work forward to collaboration. This is still yours, slide.
That was for the end. Go to the next presentation, please.
That would be good. You know, as simple doctors, we're not as good talking as Bastian is without slides. So I'm always a little bit limited in my presentation, which is supposed to have arrived, but I've got a special thing here, I think, with the net. Anyway, I think as ISPAD, we are extremely happy to have you here and to have patient advocates. We all know, at least in the regulatory world, that the representations of persons with a condition and who live with the condition and know what it means to live with that condition share the experience with those who are expected to care for them and provide the care for them, to listen to them, and not to start considering them as, in this field, diabetics or persons who just represent the disease. So very grateful to be here. And I, again, have to watch my language because last year I already started to mix it up, what we wish we knew and why. And I'm really happy to see you here. I started saying it's a crossroad between different continents, between different healthcare professionals and stakeholders in the treatment of diabetes. I think it's as well a meeting point, and I think that's more important. We are here, even if it's with a limited number of people, face to face, and that makes a change, although we are very grateful for the possibilities to share this symposium where we're going to hear a lot of far more important words than mine later on, and which we can share as well with the online community. What we wish you knew? No. I think ISPAD members, some of the ISPAD members, I have to say now, and I'll get back to that, what we wish we knew, and what we wish to know, and what we want to know from you and with you. And I think there's a lot to be learned, because let's be realistic. This is the number of hours in a year, and this is the number of hours a lot of people share with healthcare professionals and how big we feel. But let's be honest, this is the rest of the number of hours people are faced with diabetes on their own. And so it's not surprising, and it came from the world of rare diseases. Nothing about us without us. And it's a very strong wording, and I think it's completely applicable because these are the people doing most of the work. So they are in the center if we discuss plans for care, but they should also be our partners in discussing how to plan the care. So the good thing which I would like to end my short presentation and words of welcome to all of you with is the fact that diabetes care is multidisciplinary. ISPAD is worldwide, and I won't go into all the details what we're doing, but please go onto the website and you can see it. But what we do have is the group or the category of members of ISPAD, which are patient advocates. And that's not a light task. That's not something, I do something one day and the next day I'm not focused anymore. But those people who are committed to work or to conduct work relevant for persons, children, young adults and adolescents with diabetes, non-physicians, are also members, official full members of ISPAD, and can apply for it. We've developed criteria in collaboration, I think, with some of the DDocs. That's Jamie, who has been the key person. And those who want to become members are really welcome to apply. Yes, just like every healthcare professional, an advocate has to apply through the proper ways as well, but it is possible. And this is how we see the person with diabetes, a drawing of one of the kids in Luxembourg. Online and face-to-face, they're super persons and they should supervise the work we are doing. But let's try, we saw a plane before. I think this is quite stable, the way this young person drew himself. It's teamwork. And we really have to consider that as our task all together. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more from those people representing DDoC, the DDoC community. And thank you for going on this journey together.
Thank you, Carine. And again, thank you for making this possible. Now, one last introductory word. I always get asked, how do we select the 1, 2, 3 people to talk at the DDoC symposium? Or how do we select the 15 plus people or so to talk at the Doc Day, which is our main peer support online event that you will find all of the ones we've done over the last 3 years fully virtual on our YouTube channel. There's hundreds of videos now that you can follow. Here's the thing, it's hard. And I don't want to stand here and talk a lot about what we do on the meta level. We have brought 1, 2, 2.5, 3 patient advocates, diabetes advocates to this symposium today. And these are just little, little drops of the voices we have in this network. And they'll just give you what they work on, what they care for, what they have done, and what they stand for as a short insight into what's happening in this diabetes advocacy world in general. Not only in DDoC, but there's so many others out there that are not yet part of the DDoC voices, but they'll hopefully apply in the future. If you want to know more, this is really just a glimpse, right? If you want to know more, please come to the dedoc.org website, click on Doc Day, it will take you to our YouTube channel. You will see so many great faces. Or if you're here in person, just talk to these amazing people who are wearing this face mask and see what they're up to. It is definitely worth every minute. With that, we don't select to give you the broad range. We select, first of all, we brought Zuzanna here because, as I said, she's our youngest DDoC voice ever. And she has done some amazing work in her home country, Poland, and beyond. And she will just quickly talk about that as an example for what peer support and diabetes advocates can do, even at that age, coming forward. Zuzanna, thank you for joining us in Abu Dhabi.
Where should I click to skip? Okay, all right. Hello, everyone. My name is Zuzanna Burzyńska, and I'm the only Polish representative into international health-related projects, one of which is the Co-Create Youth Declaration Task Force project, and concentrates on the obesity problem among children and youth. And the other one is the Young Leaders in Diabetes project, and it is obviously about diabetes. Just recently, I have also become a DDoC voice, and now I would like to quickly thank the whole DDoC team for giving me a chance to be here today to speak about my advocacy journey. So without any further ado, let's just jump into the topic. So, as mentioned previously, I've been a youth advocate for 2 years now. It all started in 2020 when I got asked if I wanted to join an international health-related project. And to be honest, I didn't even hesitate. I prepared some required documents, I sent them and got admitted. But why did I join the Co-Create project without even thinking about it for so long? I wanted to share my knowledge about healthy lifestyle in general and healthy nutrition in particular. And I knew that I could bring something to the table because of my disease, which is type 1 diabetes, and because of what I had been going through before I was asked to join the program. But you may ask what we have been doing within the framework of the Co-Create Youth Declaration Task Force project. So in November 2020, we prepared and then adopted an official document, an official declaration of young people that is first things first, available online. So I strongly encourage you all to read it afterwards. And secondly, it is aimed directly at politicians and other stakeholders, and contains 4 different demands of young people. And I will just briefly read them to you. So the first demand is stop all marketing of unhealthy foods to children under the age of 18 years. The second one is secure all children high-quality, practical-based food and nutrition education in school and a healthy school cafeteria. Implement a sugar-sweetened beverage tax to make unhealthy foods more expensive, and offer all children and adolescents free, organized physical activities at least once every week. And we strongly believe that if these demands were implemented, the obesity problem among children and adolescents will be at least minimized or hopefully even eradicated. But implementing a document is not enough. So since 2020, we have been promoting the declaration during both online and on-site conferences. For instance, here are the demands. And for instance, I myself have participated in such conferences as the Co-Create Youth Conference in Oslo this year. You can see it in the middle of the slide. Several dialogue forums, and for instance, a symposium in Brussels called the Policy Symposium on NCD Prevention. But the Co-Create project is all about obesity, and we are currently attending a conference that concerns diabetes. So now I will briefly present to you what I am doing in the diabetes field. So this year I joined the Young Leaders in Diabetes project, which is organized by the International Diabetes Federation. And within the project, I am going to have a project myself, and I am going to carry it out in 2023 and 2024, and it is going to have two main stages. One of the stages is, or as you can see, was creating an Instagram account where I could post some updates from my life as a young diabetic and as an advocate. And the second stage of the project will be organizing a series of meetings for young diabetics, for the family members and friends, during which I am going to talk about diet-related topics, probably, but I won't rethink it once again. So it's not yet a sure thing. And when it comes to the dedoc Voices program, I, of course, want to stay in touch with all these amazing people whom you can see today. And I hope to see them all again soon at another conference, hopefully, so that we can share everything forward together as a team. Okay, so yeah. The take-home message from me to you is that young people like me, like other co-creators, like other dedoc voices, like other young leaders in diabetes, do have some ideas that we can share, but we need your support. So please, please, please reach out to us, listen to us carefully, and involve us in your projects, because in collaboration we can do great things. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Zuzanna. And I would like to reinforce her last message primarily. It's not all, first of all, I must say, when I first got to know you virtually through Instagram, etc., I was amazed that someone starts this kind of political advocacy work at age 15. And, you know, caring about NCDs and obesity, being 15 years old in high school in Poland, coming up with a resolution and bringing it all the way to UNICEF conferences, etc. I thought this was really amazing. Her last call, you know, we have ideas, we have messages that are important. Yes, that's perfectly true. Probably many of these messages you will have heard in different disguise, in different language, maybe with more scientific data and more professionally represented by some great journal. We're not reinventing wheels here. But I have a different hat on sometimes as well. I'm on the board of IDF Europe. And what we have learned in our work in Brussels in the European Parliament, but also I'm also on the board of the German Diabetes Association. So when we talk to German policymakers, Sometimes it's not just the facts and the figures and the science that makes someone who actually does policy think again or think differently or change. Sometimes it needs young people living with an emotional story that just catches their attention in a very different way. And it's these kind of stories as well, and real faces, and maybe sometimes a bit of a naiveness that really makes a difference. The same is true when I look at some of the patient advisory boards for clinical trials that I've been consulting or that I've been on. You know, all the people here from industry will know that it gets more and more difficult to get your clinical trial approved by FDA or EMA if you don't have a strong patient voice on there, if you don't have a patient advisory board. So for that also, you will need people like Zuzanna, like all these dedoc voices in the future. We together are on the same boat here. We need to make sure that this patient voice becomes stronger, better educated, empowered. We use all these words as buzzwords, but it's a true thing. From the research side, from the industry side, from the policymaking side, we need these voices to achieve change together. And I think it's great that you're here, and I look forward to you being on this dedoc peer support patient advocacy journey for many, many years, Zuzanna. Thank you for joining us. With that, I want to hand over to Sethi from India, and she will talk about the amazing work that she has been pulling off in India over the last years. Jess, DiaBesties.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bastian, and a big thank you to the entire DDoc community for the invite. And I absolutely love the DDoc community, and it's nice to have so many of you in the audience over here. So yes, today I think my name is Jazz. I'm someone who's living with type 1 diabetes, and I run the DiaBesties Foundation in India, where we do a lot of work on advocacy, but my personal passion in this life, so to say, is education for type 1 diabetes. So I always like starting with this quote, and it says that if access to healthcare is considered a human right, who is considered human enough to have that right? Is it just people who are in positions of power? Is it just people who are privileged? Is it people who are educated? Or is it truly everyone who is living a life of ups and downs that they did nothing to deserve? And as a fraternity, as a medical community over here, I think it's time that we need to reimagine and redefine what healthcare means. Is it just about medication, or does it go beyond the prescription and actually even talk about education, empathy, and elevation? And in an attempt to redefine or reimagine this term, here are a few things that I wish the clinicians and the healthcare people and even family members would know about this condition and this life. And these, I'm not going to share my personal stories, but I'm going to share stories of some of the kids that we work with in our centers in India. So the first thing that I wish you knew was that I know that insulin is my lifeline. I know it. But you also need to see my livelihood. Oftentimes we find kids who come with prescriptions of insulin, but the prescribing healthcare professional over there is not going beyond to see the person behind that prescription or seeing the person's livelihood or their circumstances. And they say, but yeah, we gave the insulin, but have you gone beyond to find out whether they can actually support themselves with that insulin? So meet Drashti. She is a 16-year-old girl from Ahmedabad, severe financial constraints. Her father passed away and her mother is a daily wage earner. She stopped insulin because she just couldn't afford it and was in DKA twice in 30 days. And we actually had to go and visit her at the hospital and, get her to come to visit our center. And so Drashti's doctor did prescribe the insulin, all check marks done over there. But he did not know that she was not in any situation to actually be able to use that insulin. And when she came to our center, she was very, very depressed. She did not know what was happening to her. And we, of course, put her onto the free insulin and test strip program through the supplies bit, but we also did weekly education sessions. We did counseling, peer support. She met people who just looked like her and felt like her. And this is Drashti's progress within a few weeks. She had an HbA1c of 12.5, and then within a few weeks, we saw a drastic shift in her management and in her general sense of well-being. So the first thing just I wish everyone would know is that it's not just about prescribing the insulin, it's about understanding the person and the personality behind your prescription. The second thing I would like to know, and this is something that I've personally gone through, and I'm sure all my colleagues here with type 1 diabetes would have faced the same thing, is that I listen, but I don't understand most of the time. I'm listening to your words, I'm nodding, yes, I'm smiling, but nothing's going in. And I'm sure all of you can relate to that. And that is the deal with Roshni as well. And Roshni was a 16-year-old, is severe lipohypertrophy in her hand, and she was injecting in her calf because somebody told her, inject in your legs. So she listened, she nodded, but she was injecting in her calf because she did not understand. Nobody spent time explaining her where in the leg, how in the leg, why in the leg. And sugars were in her high 400s. She came to our center. Again, we started her on our entire program, education about injection technique, monitoring, demos in front of her, made her do it in front of us many, many times. And this is the progress. Just by actually sitting down and explaining a little bit more and making her understand, it goes beyond just the ears. And you can see like 500s and 600s because if she was injecting in her calf, nothing was going in. And just with a simple change of sight, she's beautifully swimming in range. The third thing that I would like people and healthcare professionals to also know is that my parents need care too. And sometimes the caregivers are excluded from this narrative. And with younger kids, it's just the caregivers who are doing everything. And that is the story of Karthik and Kashish. And Karthik is a 5-year-old boy. He's our superstar. He wants to join the police. And he had a very, very uncontrolled sugars. But more than Karthik, Kashish, who is his mother, was severely distressed. And she just needed to know that she was not the only one dealing with this. So, of course, we did a lot of counseling with the mother. And I didn't counsel the mother. I don't know what it's like to be a mother. I don't have children. But there are mothers in our community who know exactly what it feels like to have a child with type 1. So we got them together. And of course, a lot of education. His HbA1c came down from 8.5 to 7.5 within 2 months. And this picture that you can see, it's of course taken with permission, but that is one of our educator mothers comforting Kashish. And Kashish just let it out. And she was like, you know what? I know I'm not alone and I know I feel safe with you. So how can this change? How can this become normal practice? I think we talk so much about education while growing up. Go to a good school, get into a good college. There's a lot of emphasis on education in our day-to-day life. But why is it not the same with healthcare? Why is it not the same with a condition that we live with every single day? So I truly believe in healthcare, education is more important than mainstream education. And that's our offering from DiaBesties. If you think about it, with all three stories, we didn't put them onto CGM. We did not put them onto a closed loop system. In certain cases, we did not even change their insulin. It was the fundamentals that were missing, the absolute basics. And that's what I believe, that creating a strong foundation so that then they can navigate through the vicissitudes. So our project from DiaBesties is called Back to Basics. It's very, very simple. You basically scan a barcode like this in my hand, and you just get into a bot. You schedule a session with one of our educators. Our team of educators are all people who are living with type 1 diabetes, or they are caregivers. And they're also professionals, so they're also dietitians or doctors or psychologists or CDEs. You schedule a session, it's very easy to do, and we're catering to your preference. So I don't want anyone to feel left out or isolated. So we ask what language you prefer. We ask what time you prefer. We really want to cater to the user. And then you schedule a session with us. And in the last year, I'm very happy to say we've got 950 calls scheduled. Average clinical A1Cs have dropped after the B2B sessions. So we've not only seen an improvement in quality of life, but we have seen clinical metrics also get improved, which I was very shocked with, also very, very happy with. And the team is of lived experience, like I said, and that's the biggest icebreaker you can have. And we've heard that they find it easier to trust because there's no vested interest over here. It's completely free of cost. And I used to get scared of asking my doctor questions, but in this case, that fear is not there. So I just want to sort of end with saying that the point of education is to make you less helpless and more competent. So education in healthcare, especially in a condition like type 1 diabetes, is so fundamentally important. And the biggest thing I wish all healthcare providers or clinicians or anyone knew is that we're not asking for confrontation, we're not asking for competition, we're asking for collaboration. It's the best of both worlds. I am not a doctor. I cannot prescribe insulin. I don't want to prescribe insulin. Let the doctors prescribe their insulin. And I know we come from a very, very overburdened healthcare system. I don't blame the doctors in India. We have way too many patients and very, very little doctors. So they do have a time constraint. So let's work together, marry the science with the soul. And you do the endocrinology bit and let us do the education bit. So thank you so much for hearing this central voice in management, the voice that speaks with lived experience, with stories of struggles and successes. So we ask you to care about this voice, my voice and our voice. And to learn more, you can definitely visit the DiaBesties Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jess. And I think the work you're doing in India with your quite big team actually is amazing. The thousands of people you've been educating, training, helping, reaching out to. I love the fact that you always bring it back to it's about the education and the time we have to talk, because this is what healthcare providers most of the time do not have. It's the time to really sit down and spend this time. And I love how you compare that. If you, all the HCPs here in the room, if you go back to your university times, I think that's a good comparison to make. I remember when I was in university, the number of hours I spent in actually these big auditoriums listening to the professor talk, and that was where the real, top-down teaching was taking place. But how many more hours did these professors then send me to study groups, homework, sit together with my fellow classmates, or mentorships where, it was a PhD student most of the time taking on. It's perfectly normal in university education. If you as a professor, doctor of medicine, were going to teach every single bit that your upcoming medicine students were to learn one-on-one, you'd be freaking out. You'd never do that. It's not achievable. You wouldn't want that. No, you give it to your PhD students, you send them to do homework, you send them to do study groups, you rely on that they organize themselves to learn together. In healthcare, that seems to be less normal. And I like how you say this is exactly what we want. This is the kind of supportive part we want to bring into the healthcare system, that we do kind of similar like in university, more decentralized, the peer support part. It's the study groups and the mentoring and the PhD students helping the doctors or the professors do what they can't do in their spare time. I think it's great. With that, I'm handing over to Tom from from JDRF, but you're all working together. He's going to talk once again about the T1D Index and why that data is so important, especially to the youth and young people living with diabetes, where the data is coming from and what we as the patient community, peer support community can do with that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Bastian. I confess I'm torn between feeling honored to be on the stage with this group and deeply intimidated. For the sake of the talk, I'll try and discipline myself to do the first of those two. Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Robinson. I'm the VP of Global Access at JDRF, which is not a job that existed 6 months ago. And if you're wondering how I got here, I trained as a human rights lawyer. I worked as a strategist for a decade at the Boston Consulting Group. And I joined JDRF 3 years ago when we started to think seriously about global access and global impact strategies. But I was also 18 years old when I was admitted to hospital with confusion and fatigue and thirst in a remote part of East Africa. And the doctors there thought it was a snake poison. And I still have a hole in my leg today where they tried to dig it out. And as I got weaker and weaker, they had to try other diagnoses until a grim-faced doctor told me, this will either kill you or save you, but it's our last shot. And I didn't wake up for a week. But when I did, I was okay. And that grim-faced doctor welcomed me back with the words, I was a little nervous about the diagnosis, but hey, it's always malaria. It's always malaria. For me, it was. But it is not, and I'm so grateful to that doctor who saved my life. But it is not always malaria, because right around the same time, in the next hospital over, which is 2 days travel away, a young doctor was being told there's no such thing as type 1 diabetes in Africa. And he didn't believe them, and he went looking, and he found 34 children that year who probably would have been diagnosed with malaria or some other condition, if not for Dr. Kaushik and his blood glucose testing. And by diagnosing them instead with type 1, he saved 34 lives that year, and he has saved thousands of lives since. So what if I told you that we here can also save thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of lives, so that one day when finally we have that final cure for type 1 diabetes, there are millions still with us who otherwise will not be. I don't want this to be an abstract concept, so let me make that real. In 2040, we think, and I'll show you the numbers in a second, we think there'll be either 1.5 or 2.5 million people in India living with type 1. And it depends what happens today. Because today, every extra test strip someone uses in India, a person uses in India, adds 3 or 4 hours to their life. And if you can get enough of them, up to 20 or 25 years to their life, 20 to 25 years, when who here doesn't know the value of a single day? You know, the first day at school, the first day at work, the first day you see an episode of Breaking Bad. Like, these are precious moments. And 1 million of these could be restored to our brothers and sisters living with type 1 in India. But let's not be naive and imperialistic about this. India gave us democracy 500 years before Athens. It gave us the number 0. It gave us the decimal point. It gave us radio transmission 2 years before Marconi. It gave us cars manufactured at 1/10 of the cost previously possible. And it gave us the sublime stroke play of Sachin Tendulkar. You only need to spend a couple of minutes with someone like Sethi to realize that 1 million extra people living with type 1 diabetes in India will change the world for all of us. And that's just one country. So in talking about global access, and when I think about our job and our team, we are talking about what is paradoxically both a horrific injustice and an enormous opportunity for the global type 1 family. So if it's such a big opportunity, why haven't we heard these sorts of numbers before? Well, they didn't exist. 3 years ago, the JDRF board voted unanimously for us to start looking into this area, and the numbers available were demonstrably wrong. And the way you'd do that is you'd compare them with registries, and they'd be off by 35, 50, 300%. So we couldn't say where people with type 1 were. We couldn't say how well they lived. We couldn't even guess at the impact of another 3 test strips per day or how many people would one day need the cures. And so we partnered up with some really smart people in groups. You can see them, their logos up here on the screen. Life for a Child, the IDF, ISPAD, Beyond Type 1. Carine de Beaufort, one of the co-authors, is here. So we could develop these numbers and shine a light on the global state of type 1 diabetes. That work is now available. The October edition of the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology includes a paper that has taken 50 people across 6 continents 3 years to write, including people like Jazz. I see Dr. Banshi up the back. Many of you here have contributed to that work, and I thank you for it. We talked to people with type 1 and their doctors. We studied programs, interventions. We built a new simulation tool that we call the T1D Index. It is now available as a paper, as a website, as a simulation tool, and as an open source code base. You can pull it up right now if you want on your phones, t1dindex.org. And you can see here some of the key numbers that have come out of that work. We think there are 8.7 million people today living with type 1. But we also think there are 3.9 million missing people who should still be alive today. And we think T1D is growing very fast, with almost 600,000 people developing the condition each year, but that 1 in 10 of those under 25 are never diagnosed and die at onset. And if we take a lifetime view for a single person, we think that the average person who develops type 1 at age 10 can expect 42 healthy years in their life, losing 32 of those years, or 32 of the years they should have had, piece by piece, to early mortality, to complications, disability, to the time invested in care, and so many other things. It's a situation that has to change. Now, how do we get these numbers? I'll be brief on this. For those of you who speak data, we used a Monte Carlo Markov chain model with machine learning components. For those of you who dated during high school, we built a model and we fed it more than 400 studies of type 1 going back to 1890. And then we asked it to make predictions about the state of type 1 in every country on the planet. And in the countries with registry data, where we know what the answers should be, the estimates were not off by 35 or 50 or 300%. They were within 6%. So it's wrong. It's not perfect. We have more work to do. But these are the best numbers we've ever had for type 1, I think, including in places like the United States. And having the T1D Index now allows us to say things we couldn't say before, and to do them using data, the foundation of science, the currency of business, the engine of change in our modern world. And I just want to share with you 3 quick messages, 3 strategic lessons that we learned at JDRF from this work. The first is that research works. Research works. In the last 50 years, we've added more and more new and better forms of therapy, and they have added 25 years to the life of the average person living with type 1 who receives that latest care, to the point that many of us can now expect to outlive our peers in the general population. Research works. It's incredible the work our scientists have done. But also not everyone benefits. The number of years lost varies dramatically depending where you were born. There are places where having type 1 diabetes means losing 50 years of healthy life. You heard me talk before about the number of missing people. By the mid-2030s, we expect that number to go north of 6 million. 6 million will be lost. That is a big number in any context. Let us not talk of this as a rare disease ever again. And then the third message is that using today's technology, we could save at least 3 or 4 million of those 6. In Africa, it's posters in clinics to help promote diagnosis. In India, it's 25 cents a day of test strips. In France, it's a CGM or better on every arm. Yes, I'm simplifying. I see the experts in the room looking at me. There is so much work to do to deliver those things. But that work could save 3 or 4 million. And I say to this audience, who would dare bet against us? The type 1 communities of people living with type 1, of people with medical training who help us do that, the loved ones who pick us up from the floor. This is an extraordinary community. JDRF itself was just a few parents around a table. India has raised more than $1.5 billion for research since. The looping community ushered in a revolution that was science fiction just a few years before. Just a few months ago, as war broke out in Ukraine, this community mobilized to put what was needed in the hands of hundreds of thousands of insulin users. And even one single person can make such a difference. I look at Bastian in Germany, Jazz in India, Paul Louis in Madagascar, hundreds of you. And I think, these are the hands that will bend the arc of history. This is not a seat at the table, this is the table. And as one guest at the end of the table, I want to tell you about 3 things that JDRF is looking to do. Firstly, because we can't stop. This data has reached out and grabbed us by the heart. One is that we are starting to pilot diagnosis programs in some of the most remote locations on Earth. In a really rigorous, measurable way, because we want to figure out what it takes and what it costs to make sure everyone gets diagnosed in a timely fashion. And if you've got clever ideas, come to us. Now's the time. And the second thing we're doing is we're supporting people who are like us, the kitchen table crowd, to build up type 1 communities in every country. And for the next little while, we're going to start with a particular focus on India and Brazil, state by state, because let's face it, almost half the impact we need to have will be in those countries. And gee, there's some incredible people doing work there. And then finally, we hope to start a conversation that brings together key players to hammer out a real plan to save those millions. and to figure out the price tag for it and to go get that funding. And if that sounds ridiculously ambitious to you, it sure sounds ridiculously ambitious to me. And yet we keep hearing, our team keeps hearing as you talk to people, this feels like a moment in time. The discovery of insulin cries out to us from a century's distance. Hundreds of thousands of people and hundreds of millions of dollars are hungering to be put to work. And for the first time in history, we have the data and the coalition and the strategy to give direction to those hundreds. The world is different than it was 3 years ago, and in 3 years from now, it will be different again. So in closing, if you think you might believe even some of those things, please let us help you. We're not here for meetings and talks. Meetings and talks are great, but we're not here for them. We're here for people and skills and networks and bright ideas. We're here for you. And we're looking for people who will do the work. We're looking for those who hear there's no type 1 in Africa and refuse to listen to that, and they go looking. And we are waiting for your call. We're waiting for your email. We're waiting for you, and we can't wait to work with you. Thanks.
Tom, thank you very much. I know you do many presentations these days about the T1D Index, but making it so personal and empathetic here to this group is really, really appreciated. I think for everyone here in the room, and that includes especially the dedoc voices and everyone listening outside and seeing this data, it is now time to really make use of it. Do send Tom, JDRF an email, make use of that data, these presentations, these key messages, and include them in your advocacy work, in your work towards achieving policy change, because this is what relates back to what I said in the beginning about what Zuzanna was presenting and what Jazz is doing in India. It's these kind of stories, personal, emotional stories, combined with data that proves that this is right and important, that can actually achieve change. Here's what I want to do now. I don't want to speak much more. I have some things at the very, very end, and we have one, so don't go away. We have a surprise end keynote speaker for just 5 minutes who you do not want to miss. I'm not going to announce him yet, but he is the winner. Can I say winner? The person who is getting the ISPAD Hero Award tonight will come for a special short presentation at the very end of the symposium, so you don't want to miss that. What I want to do now is, everybody out there watching live, if you're on Facebook, please leave your comments and questions. I'm already getting a lot. My social media team is picking those up and sending them to me by WhatsApp. I hear, Zuzanna, amazing. I hear, Jez, love your... There's somebody crying about your presentation. I see, I love Tom. And since when does someone presenting data make me cry? So there's comments coming in. So, but seriously, questions, comments to any of our amazing speakers, to Carine, or also about the work of dedoc, post it on Facebook in the comments, and my social media team will relay them, and I will read them out here for these to answer. And the same goes to this auditorium, of course. If you have a comment, a question, please keep it short, because we don't have that much time, but come up to the microphones now. And there's one thing I want to say. I know there's more than 20 dedoc voices in the room, and I know they will be flooding the microphones immediately. I would like first to see whether there's questions, comments from the HCP nurses, researchers, because we want to have this dialogue. And if not, then all the dedoc voices can come and say what they have to add. I'm not going to bar anyone, but please come up forward if you have questions to either Zuzanna's work, to what Jazz is doing in India, to Tom's work on the T1D Index, or towards dedoc and ISPAD and Carine. I'll have to see, this is going so quickly.
Hi there.
Yes, please.
And
quickly introduce yourself and then just straight away.
I'm Brent Lockie. I'm a data scientist at Children's Mercy Kansas City. And we are looking to design population health, but also individual views for people to help understand their data better. I thought, what better group to ask? What personal things would you like to see, whether it's CGM type of summaries or population health type things that you think would manage a whole population of folks living with diabetes.
Who wants to answer that? Tom, do you want to say something to that? Or just take a mic.
I think one of the things that I'd be really curious to see is, are there ways that we can count all the different ways that type 1 steals time? There are so many, and if we can find a way to start bringing those together into one single view, then that's what we manage, rather than just what's easily measured. And I think that's true both at a personal level and then at a population level. We need to make those decisions. I'll give you one example. Like, what about the travel time to get to the clinic? You know, in some places that can be such a huge part of the burden. It's not in any of my numbers. And so that sort of thing can easily drift and not get addressed.
Also, I think mental health factors is something that is easily forgotten and also plays a huge impact. Sleep lost or just hours spent crying. I mean, it's true for people who've actually, and also metrics from caregivers. I think they are also often shunned away from all this research and data. So to have those two come together to offer a more robust perspective of the life with type 1, I would say.
Question? Yes, please.
I have a question. Since we are talking about data, we know nothing can happen if we don't involve our governments into it. To think about sustainability, we can advocate today, but what are your thoughts about sustainability of type 1 diabetes and how to involve like more partnerships and sustainability of any diabetes programs?
I know Apurva very well. I think we've worked together quite a bit. So I think the question is always going to be that how do we sustain these kinds of programs? And it is partnership, not only with government, but with corporates and things who they don't have to be pharma. They don't have to be in the diabetes space at all. They just need to be people that support good work. And that's the approach and model I have taken with DiaBesties, at least. It's about getting people who believe in the mission. Maybe they don't understand it, but they know that it is providing impact. And I always believe in some sort of a measurable impact. So whether we call it data, like the gentleman is collecting, or the JDRF numbers, impact is also a story. It's a story that has been changed. It's a life that's been changed. And I think if those individual stories can come together, it's a wave of impact that I think any government would be stupid not to then support.
I can maybe add a few words from the DDoC organizational perspective to that. When we started the DDoC Voices Scholarship Program and for the first time brought a couple of DDoC voices to our very first conference, this was ATTD in 2020, with zero money basically. And we just, I was very much worried about how we're going to sustain this, because I basically promised 20 people that I will fly you to ATTD in Barcelona and pay for your hotels and your flights and your food and your access passes. And I actually didn't have that money. So yeah, I was worried about sustainability. But I think things always start with ideas, and then it moves to the people behind, and then you start doing things, and then babies kind of grow. And now look at this, we have 250, 300 DDoC Voice alumni right now. We had this amazing internal DDoC workshop yesterday, where now it's this group here and the other group we had at EASD, and the 200 or so watching live, following live, who have been at virtual congresses over these 2.5 horrible COVID years. And they're all getting together and asking themselves the same questions and doing project work and asking us to facilitate easier communications and how they can get together and how they can work with Tom and how they can learn. And we're starting the DDoC Academy early next year, where we will get some of the people presenting here at ISPAD, some of the people from your ranks, the HCP and the research ranks, some corporates, some people from within the community to share their experiences. And this whole thing kind of comes together, opens up more areas of dialogue, collaboration. This for me is sustainability, bringing more and more people to the table working together.
Can I say, I think these two just give the example, and you're not alone. There are so many people like you who have had this incredible impact, and government hasn't been involved one inch. And in fact, if I think of most of the incredible impacts that I've assessed and looked at and tried to quantify using our data, most of them just started with one person saying this must change. And then do you know what sustainability looks like? You fast forward 10 years and there's hundreds or thousands of you. It's a different conversation with government at that point.
And I mean, look how far we've gotten in just these 2-3 years. There was the first group of 20 at ATTD in 2020, just before COVID. And now we are here with our own symposium with Carine. And Carine, I have a question for you in just a minute. Or do you want to answer to that one as well? Go ahead.
Here you see all the generation. I think sustainability is a question in a society popping up regularly as well. And if I recall the first slide on ISPAD being created by a number of dedicated doctors who thought that there was not enough room for diabetes in the endocrine societies, they were 16. This is 1974. If you see where we are now, partnering with all the stakeholders around the table, I think this is how you create as well a form of sustainability, and we all need to partner.
There's a question from the audience. Please go ahead.
My name is Justa Mwenda from Kenya. I would like to ask about inclusivity in developing countries, which includes lack of education. And in the presentation, we mostly use analog kind of insulin, which have come to learn we has type 1 diabetic people living with diabetes. A mixed stand is kind of wrong. Insulin, and I would like to ask for collaborations and on training and understanding of the right medication to use. Yeah, that is my.
I totally agree with you, and it's the same state in India as well. Most of the kids that we work with at our center have come with a premixed insulin or an NPH or regular. And I think what the model we use that has worked is that we, like I said, collaboration is the key. We collaborate with doctors and endocrinologists who work close to us, and we send our kids to them to get their prescription changed. Everyone knows that it's not the best form of treatment. It's not ideal, so to say, right? And then, of course, we need to get the support for funding those analogs and that. But I think the best way that has worked with us is to have collaborative partners with HCPs who know and believe in the same mission as you do, so that when I send a person who's coming to the center, they just need to know that they need to change the medication, give me that prescription, and we'll take care of the rest. Or you take care of the rest. You educate with the rest. All they need to do is actually give you that prescription, set that dosage, and then you take it forward from there. Try it out.
Hi, my question is primarily for Tom. My name is Dawn. I'm from the United States. I work for a diabetes charity that supports people with diabetes. Your presentation on the importance of research was great, and I was really excited with the announcement of the index and pushing for more evidence-based policies in the government level. On the clinical side, I'm wondering what your thoughts are. What I see is a gap between amazing research that I see presented at conferences like this, and then what doctors actually have access and the ability or training to implement. So how do we close that gap?
That's a great question. And I think it's too big a question for a quick answer. But I will say, I think collaboration is a really big part of it. So in the sense of to close that gap, we need it to be available and funded. And so I think often political advocacy is a part of that. Sometimes it's subsidies or individuals, getting the ball rolling and just paying for it out of pocket that starts to get things going. But beyond that, we then also need to see, the adoption by people living with diabetes and the adoption by doctors prescribing. And I think one of the most powerful forces for that kind of change is an informed and advocating, group of people living with diabetes, but partnered really closely together with a similar group of people who provide the care. Because when you have one or the other at loggerheads, then it becomes a debate. But when you have them working together, then it becomes a crusade. It really converts people. So I think that's what I've seen work. But gee, that's a big question without a short answer, I'm afraid.
Tom, there's actually quite a number of questions on the Facebook stream, but I would think if we go through all of them, that would be too much. But is the data for India and Pakistan? Yes, there is. Is the dashboard open for everyone for research? I would hope so, yes.
Yes.
Are you tracking comorbidities and other autoimmune diseases? Probably not yet. I would say that we do one thing. For all the questions directly related to Tom and the T1D Index that go into very specific things, Tom, if you can maybe take a moment in the next 1-2 days, go to our Facebook stream and answer them directly. I think that would be more time efficient.
I'll jump on.
I have another question here that's to Carine. Carine, the question is, how are DDoc voices, diabetes advocates, and patients in general perceived amongst doctors and scientists? Are there critical opinions about us taking part in your conference? And what can we learn about this? And how can we be good or can be better for you, the conference organizers?
That's a brilliant question. We are discussing a lot. First of all, diabetes care is teamwork. Diabetes research is teamwork. Regulatory business is teamwork, where the person with the condition should be involved. Now, so I think we can learn a lot, and the sharing of information at this symposium, previous symposium, teach us this already. And one of the questions in one of the other symposia, again, showed the different aspects of the topics we are discussing. In the meantime, sometimes I think there are learning processes which should be put in place, and I think DDoc has specific ideas about that, which you mentioned already. And from our side, I think we all need to partner up and hear the voice of the persons with diabetes is going to be vital to move forward as well with respect to the regulatory aspects of attending meetings, because that is still a hurdle to be taken. If you see how different regulations are formulated in different countries where congresses and meetings are held. So that is work where we have to partner and to work on. And I think here again, collaboration is needed in order to work and get forward how the best way will be. What do you expect from us? What do we expect from you? It is for the moment work in progress, which we should address together.
Thank you, Carine. And I would like to pitch that question with a slight nudge to Zuzanna. This is the first time you're coming to this kind of healthcare diabetes conference like ISPAD. You've done amazing work before. You're experiencing also this DDoc community for the first time. How would you react to this kind of, like, how do you experience this? Do you see that people look at you and ask, like, what is she doing here? You know, this young girl living with diabetes, this is our conference? Or do you see yourself being appreciated? Did you have good conversations? Is it difficult? How do you feel about this?
I feel really good about this, actually. I've received so many positive comments, and I am getting involved in discussions, so it's not that I am excluded from the group, even though I am usually younger than the rest of the group. So I would like to tell, if anybody's watching who is of similar age as me, do something, and yeah, I want to encourage you to do something, not to be afraid to speak up, to take the floor. Adults are ready to hear you and to support you, so yeah.
And I think it's not just an age thing, it's in general. I can maybe add one comment. When we first had DDoc advocates come to scientific conferences, and we did manage to get in that. This was before even the DDoc Voices program as such started. We did face quite a few people from the HCP community coming up, and I'm thinking of one incident specifically. It wasn't with me, but with one of our now DDoc Voices, where that person living with diabetes was asked, what the hell are you doing here? You're a patient, this is our conference, get out. Like, it was really quite aggressive. And we had a number of these incidents. This goes 5-6 years ago, where people from the HCP community were like, what are you doing here? Or people from the corporate side were like, we're not allowed to do direct to patient, you shouldn't be here. And I gather there's some regulatory issues, etc. It has changed. So I'm not saying this is credit to DDoc, but in general, also credit to ISPAD and EASD and ATTD and all the conference organizers, and to everyone here in the room. The atmosphere has changed quite a bit, because what we get these days, and this is what I've been relayed by all the DDoc voices here, that people come and say, you must be one of those DDoc voices, tell us more about this. Or, oh, can I ask you questions? And people get up and talk to them, and there's some great communications taking place, and I think it is wonderful. There is another question online. I just use that to pitch it. There's been a number of people on the Facebook stream asking, how do you actually join this DDoc thing? It's quite simple. The next call for applications launches November 1st for the scholarship. We have limited capacity. We usually have up to 50 scholarships per conference. November 1st is the next call. That's for ATTD 2023. Then in summer, we'll open a new call for EASD and ISPAD. In between, we might be doing ADA, the German Diabetes Conference, maybe India. As I said, we're working on that. Look it up on our website, dedoc.org/voices. We'll always announce it there. Follow our social medias. Just apply. It's really straightforward. We ask you, who are you? Why do you want to become a DDoc voice? How are you going to pay it forward? Which sessions interest you? That's it. It's not a complicated application process, and we'd love to hear from you. There's another question from the audience, and then we'll have to almost come to an end.
Very quickly. Just a comment and also an invitation. I'm Thiago Geronimo. I'm from the Andalusia region in Spain. Well, first of all, congratulate you all for all the role you have been done, and together with ISPAD, I see that ISPAD has supporting you a lot of this opening, giving voice for people with diabetes. And I see that you have been working a lot of networking, education, and now together with JDRF research. So I think there is everything to do. So this is why I'm talking here on behalf of the Genius Group, that you have everything to do with the Genius Group. So if you don't know what is the Genius Group is a special group of ISPAD for the young members of ISPAD. So you're more than invited to come to our Genius session this afternoon, and you see a lot of things that you have developing, and we are I'm more than certain that we working together with the doc and people with diabetes, we have much more to do. So this is an invitation and a comment that you are doing great, and let's do it together. I think that diabetes care is an equal, whatever you are, whatever the country you come from. So and you are here to help us to that research be more equal all over the world. So thank you.
Thank you. And this is what I love, as a not one, but one outcome now of this. Suddenly somebody's getting up and sending out an invitation, an open call for collaboration. And this is what we've been calling for. It happened at the same time, just in the symposium, the patient advocacy symposium before. One of the editors of The Lancet stood up and said, actually, how about you start writing with us, for us? How can we do this? And we're going to pick up that conversation, similar to how we've been starting a collaboration with the BMJ that started at ISPAD last year. So wonderful. I want to thank Carine again. I want to thank Zuzanna, Jess, and Tom for being here. Like I said, these are just glimpse insight into what patient advocacy, what peer support, what DDoc is all about. If you want to know more, just follow some of the hashtags. Nothing about us without us. Pay it forward. We are not waiting. DDoc voices. Come to our website. There's so much going on in this world out there, and we really want HCPs, researchers, and the whole community to move closer together and do this together. And with this, I am trying to find Oleg. Oleg, where are you? Come forward. This is our surprise speaker now for the last couple of minutes, because I wanted to, and I asked for permission beforehand. Oleg, I am super honored to have you here as a spontaneous, impromptu speaker for just a few minutes, and I'll have to introduce this guy. Oleg is originally from Ukraine. He lives in Vienna. He used to be the head user interface designer for a big diabetes app that you all know. On February 24th, we all know what happened. Putin's Russia invaded Ukraine, and there were a couple of people that are usually behind the Spare a Rose campaign that some of you may know. Spare a Rose is a fundraiser within the diabetes online community to raise funds for many, many years for children with diabetes, for Insulin for Life, for all these organizations supporting people living with diabetes, children with diabetes, now also adults with diabetes in some of the poorest countries in the world. What we did in the nights of February 24, 25, 26 is we changed spare rows around to spare rows for Ukraine and went out to one of these organizations and said, can we do something here? Whatever comes in terms of funding for the next month, for all of February and March, will go specifically to people in Ukraine, because what happened is on our Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, we received cries for help for people hiding out in bomb shelters and all over Ukraine saying, we're here, we have a couple of vials of insulin left, we're under a hospital that has been bombed, we have no access to anything, we gave our last insulin vials to the few children that are here, we have about 2-3 days to survive. What can you do? I immediately started reaching out to big companies like Novo, Sanofi, Lilly. I immediately started out to reaching some of our corporate partners like Medtronic, who within a couple of days pledged, I think, 100,000 euros to support. But the question was still, what do we do with money if it's really about getting a vial of insulin to a specific bomb shelter? Because direct relief, UNAID, etc., the big ones weren't ready yet. This takes a while. And had it not been for, it was a whole group effort. There were many, many people involved. Jeff Hitchcock in the US from Children with Diabetes, Renza Shibilia in Australia. You'll probably know more about who else, Alicia Jenkins, etc. But this guy is one of the core people who actually made things work on the ground. And I want to say thank you. You are going to get the ISPAD Hero Award, I believe it's called, later tonight for the effort you've done. But I wanted to quickly talk about what actually happened and how you managed to help hundreds, if not thousands of people to this day living with diabetes in Ukraine in this horrible situation. Oleg, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. And I have to start with a disclosure that I'm terrified of public speaking. So I ask for your forgiveness. So I don't have type 1 diabetes myself, but I've been working as a diabetes software designer for the last four years and as a user experience designer for the last 12 years. I also have many close friends who have diabetes, so I know the problem quite well. Although right now I'm in Vienna, as Bastian said, I'm from Kiev, Ukraine, and all of my family and friends are still there right now. And the February 24th was a total shock for all of us. At the morning of the invasion, I woke up to the news of a cruise missile exploding next to the apartment of my uncle. At day one, nothing was working. All the supply chains have collapsed. No mail, no public transportation, nothing. All the things that we take for granted in civilization just stopped. And this happens because regular people like us were just frozen in fear and not sure what to do next and what to expect. I was also shaken at the time, and working in the field of diabetes, I immediately understood that we are on the clock until insulin runs out because supply chains are not working. And the first day I had to do just something, anything. So I collected all the supplies I could find in my sugar office from my type 1 friends, and I jumped in the car with my wife and started driving to the border. During this 8-hour ride, we were constantly on the phone, coordinating and trying to find connections within Ukraine and trying to help our friends to get out of Ukraine. This is also how I got in touch with Insulin for Life in the car. This was a time for extreme self-organization. When everything around us has failed, regular people came together and created their own supply chains. Like ants making an anthill, this is a great analogy. And whole companies within Ukraine with the thousands of employers just started volunteering. So I focused on bridging the gap, on making donations from the West to make their way into Ukraine to the hands of people who actually need them. And over the next half a year, together with Insulin for Life, and thanks to Spare Rows campaign, we managed to ship thousands of kilograms of insulin, test strips, and critical supplies into the hardest hit places in Ukraine, where people suffer most and large organizations will not dare to go, as Bastian said. And thanks to the volunteers in Ukraine, we managed to reach people who are locked in the war zones or in the cities destroyed by war, people who cannot get any other help. Through the network of doctors, we also managed to reach many hundreds of internally displaced people, especially children with diabetes, and supply them with essential pump supplies. So thanks to incredible people in Ukraine, those supplies have reached Bucha, Kherson, Mariupol, Donetsk Oblast, Zaporizhia, and Energodar, and many other cities and small villages on the front lines. This work in Ukraine has been done by regular people with their foots on the ground. And thanks to Insulin for Life and Spare Rose campaign, we continue those efforts right now. We are still facing a brutal and terrible enemy that specifically targets civilians on purpose. They target hospitals and infrastructure, hoping to break our spirits, but they will not succeed. Because people matter, grassroots efforts matter, and just one box of insulin and test strips in the right place in the right time can save a life. And because those who care will not stop caring and doing. I just want to thank you to everybody who has donated to Insulin for Life and Spare Rose. You are my heroes, and without you, this would not be possible. Thank you.
Oleg, sit there. I think you are our hero. I mean, it's kind of, speaking from a European Western world perspective, getting a bit of money together in this kind of crisis is, I don't want to say easy, but it took a couple of phone calls to get the first corporates to give larger amounts of money. And it took us 2 nights, I think, to redesign the website and say Spare Rose is now Spare Rose for Ukraine, and we're collaborating with Insulin for Life. We had been collaborating with Life for a Child for many years. So that was kind of the easy part. It was 2 nights. But then you sit there and suddenly the money is coming in, and then you look at the situation on the ground, and what do you do with money? Money is not going to save a kid sitting in a bomb shelter survive. That's not how things work. I know we had this crisis talk in the other patient symposium, and it was a lot about funding, etc. But that's only the one hand side. The other thing is, what do you then actually do when you have money to get supplies to where they are really needed? So you are our hero for making that work, because the work you have been doing and are doing to this day with this horde of volunteers, many of them people living with diabetes in Ukraine, who take huge personal risks to drive to the border, pick up a shoebox-sized carton or come with a little truck and pick up a little more, and then go past Russian tanks and into cities that are under siege to places where the big organizations will never go until this day, has saved hundreds, if not thousands of lives. And Oleg, I think getting the ISPAD Hero Award is the least that this is worth. Thank you to all your friends and partners and everybody on the ground doing this. This is truly amazing. Thank you. With that, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching online. Comments are still welcome on the Facebook chat. I think our speakers will be looking later to answer if there is more questions. You want to know more about DDoc, go to dedoc.org. You want to join the DDoc Voices, please apply as of November 1st. And last not least, I want to also thank again all our DDoc Voices, more than 20 here, for doing this pay it forward reporting back to the online community. And I want to thank our 5 partners who've been bringing you or helping us bring you here. Novo Nordisk and Lilly have been supporting. Medtronic has been a huge supporter this year, Diabeloop and Dexcom for many years now. Thank you to these 5 companies that are enabling the DDoc Voices program and thereby enabling us to bring these 20-some great advocates from all over the world, including our speakers. This was DDoc. This was the DDoc Symposium. Enjoy ISPAD. Bye-bye.